Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland, and in this video I'm asking whether President Volodymyr Zelensky is a good leader. There's no doubt that he is the president of Ukraine. No one questions his legitimacy, apart from Putin, and that's really the pot calling the kettle black. But how effective a leader is he? Because there are some leaders who are excellent, there are some leaders who are disastrous, and so on. Leaders' popularity obviously goes up and down. Leaders might be some fantastic in some ways, like have a superb economic policy, but to be diplomatically incompetent or whatever. But so Zelensky, it's important to remember he came to politics relatively late in life. After that Servant of the People TV comedy, then it were about a teacher with this expletive laden rant against corruption and lassitude in government circles, which goes viral, being elected president. Well, here life imitated art, and they established that party. It's called Slug Naroda, meaning servant of the people, and he really was elected in 2019. And I was in Russia when he was elected. I know he was elected in Ukraine, but there's a lot of comment in Russia about it. It was only in his mid 40s that he got into politics, never evinced the least interest in it. But as an actor, he can deliver a line with great expression. So the performative aspects of politics, he's superb in that regard. Got self assurance, rock star presence. Even though he's actually quite short, he's about 5'7", but he acts like he's 10 foot tall. Doesn't appeal to suffer Napoleon complex, unlike Putin. So there are some ways he's a fantastic and galvanized the country. And being invaded by a much larger neighbor would tax any politician, no matter the most seasoned statesman. What do you do? And he did not run away. Had he run away, that might have simply collapsed Ukrainian morale, and Putin might have got what he wanted. So you've got to hand him for that, for really putting steel in the soul of Ukraine when they so urgently needed it in those dark days in February 2022, when everybody expected that the Russians were going to be marching through Kiev, and it hasn't happened, and they're nowhere even close. We can't completely discount the possibility that will happen in future, this year and next. I'm hoping not. What was the chance that the Russians will take Kiev this year? I give it like a 10% chance. But back in the beginning of the war, it seemed like over 90% chance they would take, and soon as well. So in some ways, he's outstanding. He's managed to get the public largely together. Obviously, there is growing dissent. The longer the war goes on, the higher the casualties reach without victory in sight, and they're still being pushed back. I mean, very little these days. Obviously, been some spikes in his popularity after military successes. The middle of 2022, when they counterattacked effectively, or September 2022, a offensive there, they retook ground, or indeed August last year, the Kursk incursion, things like that. But some criticism, as much criticism about the conscription, about lowering the age to 25. Some people think it's wrong. Others think it's wrong because they haven't gone even lower. So that's been a problem. Where there've been some corruption scandals, he's incorruptible. Even his worst enemy doesn't accuse him of having his fingers in the till, had he not cracked down on it effectively. Sometimes demoting military commanders who have their constituencies. So, I mean, unpopular decisions aren't necessarily the wrong ones to take. And he's personally unambitious. He said he'd be willing to leave public life in return for NATO membership. That'd be a very small price to pay, and that would actually be his legacy secured if they managed to get that. Something as Ukraine has craved for decades. Where is he ineffective? Well, bringing in martial law at the beginning was certainly the right thing to do. They have to extend it every 3 months. That's possibly the wrong thing to do. It would underscore his legitimacy, or elect somebody else. I know it's very difficult to hold an election during a war when they're fighting for their lives. Obviously, the Russians would throw everything at interfering and try to bring the most capitulationist candidate to office. Whoever won, unless it was Russia's placeman, they would say no, rigged, rigged, rigged. And of course, there are enough palizny idioti who'd fall for that lie. If someone tells you a lie often enough, you'll believe it. Most of the mind is subconscious, so you can dupe people like that. So I think that's possibly a mistake. I think not sorting out the conscription thing, that's probably where he's gone wrong. The diplomacy, mostly very effective. He's got to keep it in the news. There's Ukraine fatigue. People eventually get bored of it, and they just stop listening. Remember, with his long conflicts like Iraq and Afghanistan, after that, a bomb went off, 75 people were killed. People just shrugged it off in the end. And he doesn't want that to happen to Ukraine. It would just loses salience, it slips down the ratings, and therefore it's less politically relevant and less money is being donated. Handling tricky relations with other countries like Hungary and Slovakia, who were unsympathetic, but the European Union members, and Hungary is able to hold up an aid package for months. Is complicated by the fact that there's a Hungarian ethnic minority in Ukraine, several hundreds of thousands of people, partly because the Soviet Union annexed some Hungarian territory, made it part of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, and now obviously the independent country, the Republic of Ukraine. So Hungary is concerned about the Magyar language rights of those people. And so he's managed to navigate this quite well, not perfectly. There's not really discredit on him. It's just partly the obstinacy of Robert Fico in Slovakia, and indeed Orban Viktor in Hungary. Now, he obviously got it wrong with Trump, and now it's partly Trump's idiocy, his cruelty, his desire to publicly humiliate people, his narcissism, his gangsterism. But bearing in mind that Trump is like that, and that keeping on the right side of him may well be life or death for Ukraine's nation, you may have to grovel, and you just might have to eat humble pie. And I know it's revolting, but that is the price that's got to be paid, I suppose. So maybe got that wrong sometimes. I'm not sure what else. Yeah, he's good in keeping control of his army because they got some of these American armaments and they weren't to use the armaments beyond a certain range for certain things. And I'm sure the commanders were itching to do them. Oh, just ignore it. Our guys are getting killed every day. Just fire it anyway. And said, no, we're not going to disobey the Americans no matter what. Otherwise, the arms are cut off. And he did actually manage to get them to obey that order. Where did he go wrong? I think even right at the beginning of the war, there's a massive Russian military buildup at the beginning, and I think it was right to negotiate once the war started because he couldn't be seen to be unreasonable. Were they going to be completely wiped out? So have some sort of diplomatic option. That's why negotiating in Belarus right at the beginning with the Russian delegation, later in Turkey. By the summer of 2022, when things had changed around to stop that. But his mistake was not to have some of the bridges blown up before the war, because remember when the CIA and British external intelligence MI6 said they're going to attack within 48 hours, that public warning. Had he blown up those bridges now, tell the commanders, blow them up now, phone back and out, is it blown up or not? Right, you're sacked, and get someone else to do it. Russia might not have invaded because there was about a dozen invasion routes. And if there's a crucial bridge and that's been blown up, can you even do it? Because you have hundreds of tanks and trucks, armored personnel carriers, self-propelled artillery pieces, and so on to get across that river. And you can rebuild a bridge, but it might take weeks, especially if you're under fire. There might be some of these bridges blown, and not just the very first one, the next one, or the next one on your route. Putin might just say, well, we can't do it. I mean, we could fire missiles that we could bomb, but we can't launch a ground invasion. Now, if you did that and the Russians didn't invade, Russia would say, well, what are you doing blowing up bridges? You're crazy. This is sabotage. Okay, does it seem faintly embarrassing? Far, far less embarrassing than what they got now. So some of the bridges were supposed to be destroyed before the war began to forestall the invasion, and they weren't, and the Russians made serious headway. So I think that was a mistake. Were all those commanders sacked or more likely jailed? Why didn't they do it? Treason in some cases, panic, incompetence, and so forth. Anyway, thank you for watching my channel. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon and donate to PayPal, georgecallahan79 at gmail.com. Goodbye.